using your own domains, then you can make use of your SAS service for that. Like an official email, then we can make use of the SAS service. And then we looked at your Lambda. Now, Lambda is a serverless computing, right? So if you want to execute any code without provisioning or without managing any servers, then we can make use of your Lambda. And we also saw an example for that, right? Now, the next service, again, a very important service that we are going to look at is your Route 53. So yesterday we talked a bit about your Route 53. So Route 53 is your DNS service. Now, what is DNS? DNS is, it stands for domain name service. And if you want to create a human user-friendly URLs, that's where we can make use of your DNS. So first, let's talk a bit about your DNS. So before we begin with your Route 53, it's important that we understand what is DNS and why we have DNS. So simple, your DNS, it stands for domain name service. And if you have used internet, then you have used DNS. As simple as that. For example, let's say here, I will go and let's say I'll hit google.com. Now this is nothing but a DNS. All right. Now let me do a ping to this. Okay. So from my local machine, I'll do a ping. So ping google.com. Okay. And here, if you see, there's an IP address associated with this. So basically, your google.com is running on this IP address. But as a user, it is very difficult for us to remember this IP address. So that is where we can create a user-friendly name, a user-friendly URL by making use of your DNS. That's the whole point of your DNS. So if you have used internet, then you have used your DNS. And DNS is mainly used to convert human-friendly domain names into an IP address. So IP, it stands for Internet Protocol Address. So, when we are hitting this URL, to convert this URL to the respective IP address, that's where we can make use of your DNS. So the DNS takes care of it for us. Now, we have already discussed this under your VPC. So when we talk about your IP addresses, so these IP addresses is what your computers use to identify each other on a network. So if you're, like a network, and if you have lots of computers, now these computers, they can talk to each other using the IP address. All right. The URL does not really, the machines, they do not really care about the URLs. They make use of these IP addresses to talk to each other. Now, when we talk about these IP addresses, they can be divided into two types. We have the IPv4 and then we have the IPv6. We have talked about this in your VPC. So the IPv4, it's a 32-bit address and it has over 4 billion different addresses. And IPv6 is a 128-bit address. Okay, so this is basically a number. So something like 10.0.0.0, that's your IPv4. And if you see numbers plus characters, that's your IPv6. So as of now, most of us are used to the IPv4 address, but in the future, you might see people moving to IPv6 because most of the IPv4 are already taken, right? So when we talk about your DNS, we have lots of options that are available in AWS. Route 53 is a service that does the DNS work for us. Now, if you don't want to use AWS, then you have other options like GoDaddy.com, you have Hostinger, you have Bluehost. Likewise, there are lots of options that you can use to work with your DNS. So Route 53 is a highly available and scalable domain name service, and this is a web service in AWS. Now, there are three main things that your Route 53 does. One, you can use it for your domain registration. So to begin with, you will need to first register a domain. You will need to register this on your name. Now this is registered with Google, right? So now why do we need to register this? So imagine you have a bike, right? Now any vehicle that we take, it is registered, right? And that vehicle, it has a unique number that is allocated only to that vehicle. We cannot use that number with any other vehicle. Now, why do we do that? That is to make sure that each vehicle has a unique name and to maintain that, to make sure that the numbers are not getting duplicated. So that's why you need to register your domain. So domain registration. So your website needs a name such as example.com. Route 53 lets you register a name for your website or web application known as a domain name. So that's one functionality of your Route 53. We can use it to register your domain names. We can also use it for your routing. Now, once your registration, once you've got your URL, the next thing will be to do the routing, to do the mapping. That is, if I hit google.com, to which IP address it should go. So likewise, let's say if I do a ping to youtube.com, so you can see this is having, I mean, though the range, so this is also 142.250 and this is also 142.250. So basically they're within the same range. So this is basically your Google network. So we know that YouTube and Google both are same. Now let's see facebook.com. Now, if you see, this is a different network, right? So to map this, so when I hit this URL, it should go to this IP, or when I hit this URL, it should go to this IP, or when I hit this URL, it should go to this IP. This routing can be done by using this DNS routing. So when a user opens a web browser or enters your domain name, let's say example.com or subdomain name, something like sub.example.com in the address bar, Route 53 will help you to connect your browser with the application. So here, when I go and hit this, like in this case, google.com, when I hit this, when it is routing us to that server and it is giving us this response. So this is what your DNS routing can be useful for. And the last thing we have is your health checking. So we can also use this to check if my application is available or not, or if the server is reachable or not. All those things can be done. So Route 53 sends automated requests over the internet to a resource, such as a web server, to verify that it is reachable, available, and functional. We can do that also. So these are three main functionalities that we have when we talk about your Route 53. So once again, we have the domain registration, then we have the DNS routing, and then we have the health check-in. Questions?
No, Ravi.
All right. So how does your domain registration work? Right. So if you want to create a website, so let's say you are you're planning on starting a new web application, right? Now that web application, the first thing you have to do is to decide on the name that you are going to use for that web application, right? So you start by registering the name for your website, and we call that as a domain name. So domain name is the name such as your example.com that your users are going to enter in the browser to display your website. So basically, the domain that you want your users to use to access your web application. So your domain name, so this is basically what it is. So you choose a domain name and confirm if it's available. So step one is to check whether the name that you're looking for, the domain name that you're looking for, whether it is available or not. Meaning no one else has registered that domain name that you want. So when we talk about your domain names, the domain name has to be unique across the globe, right? We cannot have duplicate domains, right? So the first step would be to check whether a domain name is available or not. Now, how do we do that? We have different options. So we have this database called Whois database. We can use this one also. So if you go to this whois.com, and you can give the domain name over here. So something like, let's say, google.com, and do a search. Or here also you can see. So you can see what happened. Okay, let me check over google.com, and we click on this Whois. Now this will basically tell me who owns google.com. So you can see the domain google.com and who is a registrar. So this is the person who has registered the domain, when this was registered, when this expires, when this was updated, and who basically who owns it. So which organization owns it. So Google, which state, which country, the email, alternative contact information, all this information will be available. So now we can clearly see that google.com is not available, right? So that will be your step one, to check whether a domain is available or not, right? So likewise, let's say I have my own domain, right? So let's say cloudtechies.cloud. And if I look for this, this will also tell me whether the domain is available or not, right? So it's loading. Yeah. So, oops, sorry. Yeah. So here you can see. So what is the domain? Who was the register? So I've used Hostinger to register this. When this was registered, when this expires, when this was updated, all this information. So contact information, I have not made it public. If I make it public, it will be clear. It will clearly tell me that I have registered it. And here you should be able to see some more information. So this will be your step one to check whether a domain is available or not. So let's try this. And you can see this is available. And this will be the cost. So this will be your step one to check whether a domain is available or not. Now, once you confirm that, okay, the domain is available, you register the domain with your Route 53. So in this case, Route 53, but you can use any registrar you want. So when you register a domain, you provide names on and contact information for the domain owners and contact. So basically, you need to, it's like a sign up. So you need to provide details. So when you register a domain with Route 53, the service automatically makes itself the DNS service for the domain by doing the following. So before I talk about this, now the same thing we can do in Route 53 as well. The only thing is your Route 53 will not tell you who has registered that domain. It will simply tell you whether the domain is available or not. Okay. It does not have the feature to tell you who has registered it. For that, we have to use third-party applications. Like in this case, I have used who is. We can use that to verify. But sorry, give me 1 minute. So that's my Route 53. And if I go to the service, here, this is what you will see. So you can go to this domains over here, right? So you can go to registered domains. As of now, I don't have any domains in Route 53. I have not registered any domains in Route 53. So you have the option, you can register domains and you can search for the domain. So let's say I'll look for this cloudtechcase.cloud and then I'll do a search. Now you can see not available, and it will not tell me who has registered it. Right? It will simply tell me that it is not available. And it will recommend me some alternate options. So I have cloudtechcase.host, .com, .net, .com, and then so on. So with this you'll have to pay money. It's not free, it is chargeable, right? And here is the cost depending on the domain that you're going to use, .com, .net, .info. Your cost will change. So this is your per year cost. Okay, so now let's say I look for cloudtechcase.tech and you can see this is available and this will be the cost for it. So once you're okay with this, you can click on select and you go to checkout where you start filling the details. You also have the option of going with 1, 2, 3, whatever. It's up to you. So you can auto renew this. Next, you start filling the details. So like is a company or a single person or an association? What is this? You fill in the details, your number, your address, and all these things, and then you can go and register this. And this will register a domain on your name. This will be step one. Questions until here?
No, it's clear.
Now, in my
That's
case, I'm
clear.
using, all right. Now, in my case, I'm using this domain registrar, Hostinger, which is a third-party domain registrar, simply because this is cheaper for me. With your Route 53, the minimum cost is $11, which will come around 800 to 900 rupees. Now, this one I registered it for, I think, 200 rupees or something. So, the only reason I'm using this is because it is cheaper for me. Okay. Other than that, nothing else. If you're okay to pay that money, you can go ahead with your Route 53. So, at an organization level, you will see people using Route 53 to register the domains. Okay. So, if you're on AWS, then Route 53 is something that you will be using very commonly to register your domains. So step one is your domain registration. Now, once you have your domain registrations, we have something known as hosted zones. So here, if you see, so we have something known as hosted zones. Hosted zones is where we do the DNS routing. Okay, so what is a URL, to which IP address it should go, to which load balancer it should go. To do that routing, we make use of your hosted zones. Okay, so if if you have registered your domain with Route 53, Route 53 will automatically create this hosted zone for us. Okay, so when you register a domain name with Route 53, the service automatically makes itself the DNS service for the domain by doing the following. So creates a hosted zone that has the same name as a domain, assigns a set of 4 name servers to the hosted zone. When someone uses a browser to access your website, such as www.example.com, these name servers tell the browser where to find your resources, such as a web server or an S3 bucket, and gets the name servers from the hosted zones and adds them to the domain. So basically, it does few things. We will be doing this manually because we have not registered our domain on Route 53. We have registered our domain over here. So we will be doing this manually. So I'll come back to this in some time. Now, at the end of the registration process, Route 53 will send your information to the registrar for the domain. The domain registrar is either Amazon's registrar or the registrar associate Gandhi. Okay, so basically, whatever the contact information, the domain names, whatever we have entered, that information will be shared with a global organization, which is your registry. So the registrar sends your information to the registry for the domain. A registry is a company that sells domain registrations for one or more top level domains such as .com. So I mean, see, we have so many domain registrars, right? So we have Route 53, we have GoDaddy.com, we have Bluehost, we have Hostinger. Likewise, you have so many domain registrars. Now, let's say I will register my domain with Hostinger, right? So how does my Route 53 know that, okay, the domain is already taken? Or how does my Hostinger know that, okay, the domain is already taken? So on top of these domain registrars, we have one more level, which is your registry. Now, this registry is common for all the domain registrars. So whenever I'm checking whether a domain name is available or not, that information I'm basically fetching it from the registry. All right. So the registrar, it can be your Route 53 or Hostinger, sends your information to the registry for the domain. A registry is a company that sells your domain registrations, right? So the registry stores the information about about your domain in their own database, and also stores some of the information in the public who is database. So this is where I accessed the who is application. So some of the information that you have entered, especially your contact information, that will be stored in this who is database. And this is how anyone can use to validate whether a domain name is available or not. Right? So this is public information, so anyone can see. So at any point, if you want to know, like who owns a URL, right? You can make use of this who is database. Okay, so you also have the option of transferring your domain. So if you already registered a domain name with another registrar, so in this case, let's say I have already registered a domain with Hostinger, I have the option of transferring this to Route 53. I can do that. So you can choose to transfer the domain registration to Route 53. So here you can see requests, and not over here, rather under registered domains, you can see transfer in. So single domain, you can give the domain over here and check, and it says not transferable. Okay, for some reason I don't know, could be because of this or something, I don't know, but generally this is the process. So this will tell whether it is transferable or not, right? And here will be your cost. And if you're okay with this, you can move it from Hostinger to Route 53, and you can start managing it from here. Questions?
No, Ravi.
No, sir.
All right.
No, Ravi.
So this is how your domain registration works, or your Route 53 works. All right. So as a user, what we do is we hit the URL. So let's say www.example.com. Now this will go to the DNS resolver and it will check whether this name is valid or not. Now from here, it goes to something known as a root name servers. All right. Now this name server will tell that, okay, you're talking about .com, go to this name server for .com. Now from the .com, it will go to your Amazon Route 53 name server where it will find the IP address that has been mapped with that particular URL. And then that IP address, when Route 53 will hit that server on that particular IP address, and whatever the response is there, it will get that response and give it back to us, to the end user. So whenever we are hitting a URL, there's a lot of action that is going on in the back end for us to see this particular page. And this is all that action. Right? So generally, when we talk about your domain names, there are two types of domain names that you can choose from. One is your generic top level domains, and then you have the geographic top level domains. So your generic top level domains are global extensions that are used and recognized around the world, such as .com, .net, .org. So all these are known as your generic top level domains. So for example, here, if I'm looking for register, and let's say cloud, yeah, so all these you see .host, .com, .net, .com, .net, all these are known as a generic top level domains, and this is something very commonly used across the world, right? They also include specialty domains such as .bike, .condoms, .marketing, and then so on. So there are lots of top level domains that you can choose from. So like in this case, so let's say, this is cheaper for me and I can go with this. Or if you're okay with this, then you can go with the .com. Or if you're looking for more cheaper options, then you can accordingly look for it. So let's say cloudtech is .io, and you see this is $71. Likewise, let's say .site, this is $20. So depending on the top level domain, your cost will also vary, right? And then you have the geographic top level domains. So the following domain extensions are grouped by geographically and include the official country specific extensions known as country code top level domains. So for example, Amazon.in. Now Amazon.in is specifically for India. So the .in specifies India location. So that's your geographic top level domains. So examples include .be, which is for Belgium, .in, which is for India, .mx, which is for Mexico, and then so on. Now, not everyone can use these geographic top level domains. The rules for registration of your CCTLDs, which is your country code top level domains, vary by country. So some countries are unrestricted, meaning anyone outside India can use the I.in extension, meaning that anyone in the world can register it, while others have certain restrictions, such as residency. And few countries, they have restrictions only if you're a resident of that particular country, then only you can use the country code. Questions?
No. No, sir.
All right. So talking about your domain registrars, so a domain registrar is a company that manages the reservation of internet domain. So it is simply a company which helps you to manage and register your domains. Hostinger is a domain registrar. Route 53 is a domain registrar. So a domain name registrar must be accredited by a generic top level domain registry or a country code top level domain registry. Now, because all of the names in a given domain have to be unique, there needs to be a way for you to organize also that domain names aren't duplicated. And this is where domain registrars come in. So that's the main functionality of your domain registrars, to make sure that domain names aren't duplicated. So a registrar is an authority that can assign domain names directly under one or more top level domains. And these domains are registered with INIC. So all these are global organizations. It's a service of ICANN which enforces uniqueness of domain names across the internet. Each domain name becomes registered in a central database known as the Whois database. And some of the popular domain registrars include GoDaddy, Bluehost, Hostinger, Route 53, etc. So there are lots of options available that you can choose from. Okay, so that's about your domain registration. If something is not clear, let me know. I will repeat it. But pretty much, that's what your DNS is. All clear?
So can we link multiple IP address to one domain?
So in that case, what you do is you maintain a subdomain.
Okay.
So something like, let's say, a.example.com, b.example.com, c.example.com. So there should be some uniqueness in the URL.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, something like, let's say, for example, you have google.com, right? Now, I cannot map google.com to, I cannot create multiple google.com, which is pointing to the same number. Basically, what you're doing is you're creating duplicates, and that can create a confusion, right? So, generally, it's not recommended. So, you have to make sure that it is unique. And how do we make sure it
Yeah.
is unique? By making sure the URL is unique.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next we are going to talk about your hosted zone. So hosted zones is basically what we use for the routing. All right, so the hosted zone is a container for records, and records contain information about how you want to route the traffic for a specific domain, such as example.com. So when I hit example.com, what should happen? To which IP address it should hit, or to which web server it should hit. That routing can be done by using your hosted zones, right? So hosted zone and the corresponding domain names have the same name, and we can create two types of hosted zones: public hosted zones, which is accessible over the internet; private hosted zones, which is not accessible over the internet. It is accessible only within the VPC. So to create your hosted zones, so I can go to my Route 53. I'll go to the hosted zones, and here you can create your hosted zone. All right. So generally here the domain name, it should be the same name as your domain that you have over here. Okay. So it should be the same name, and then you can give a name. So demo, and you can choose whether it's a public hosted zone or a private hosted zone. So in my case, it's going to be a public hosted zone, and then click on create, and this will create a hosted zone for us. Now, when this hosted zone is created, you will see here there are a couple of records that are added. So every hosted zone by default at the minimum will have these two records. So let's talk about these two records. So first we are going to talk about your SOA record. Now the SOA record, it stands for start of authority. So basically this is where all the authority takes place. So the SOA record provides information about the domain and the corresponding Route 53 hosted zone. So this basically provides the information about your domain, right? So the SOA record includes the following contents. So the Route 53 name server that created the SOA record. So here, so the Route 53 name server that created the SOA record, then the email address of the administrator. So this is the email address of the administrator. Then a serial number that you can optionally increment whenever you update the record in the hosted zone. So this is a serial number. Whenever you update your SOA record, it is recommended that you change this number. Then a refresh time in seconds, that secondary DNS servers wait before querying the primary DNS server's SOA record to check for changes. So this one. Then we have your the retry interval in seconds that a secondary server waits before retrying a failed zone transfer. So again, here this is in seconds, which is around 15 minutes. Then the time in seconds that a secondary server will keep trying to complete a zone transfer. So hosted zone transfer, that will be taken care by this. And then we have the minimum TTL. Now TTL, it stands for time to live. So TTL is basically your cache system. So this value defines the length of the time that recursive resolvers should cache the responses from Route 53. So this is default 24 hours. So this is something that gets created automatically, and we don't touch this. Maximum, we don't touch this unless you have very explicit requirement. The next record we have your NS record. So here, this is the next record we have. So NS record, it stands for name servers. Okay, so here, this is your NS record. So NS stands for name server records and are used by top level domain servers to direct traffic to the content DNS server, which contains the authoritative DNS record. So here, if you look at this one, so when I hit the URL, this name service is what tells you to which top level domain it has to go. It has to go to the .com, or it has to go to the .net, to where it should go. That is taken care by your name servers. So Amazon Route 53 automatically creates a name server record that has the same name as your hosted zone. So here you can see this is the hosted zone. So it creates this automatically, and it creates 4 records for us. So it lists 4 name servers that are the authoritative name servers for your hosted zones. Except in rare circumstances, Amazon recommends that you do not add, change, or delete the name servers in this record. So this NS record and the SOA record gets created automatically. And like I said, 99% of the time we don't touch this. In addition to this, we have many more records that we can use. So we have records like A record, which is for your IP address. We have 4A records. So this is for your IPv4. This is for IPv6. We have CNAME records, MX records, TXT records, PTR, SRV. So likewise, you have lots of records. So if you remember the SES example that I showed, there we had used your CNAME records. So based on your use case, based on the requirement, we have different records. We will be talking about some of these. We'll talk about your A record. We'll talk about your CNAME record. So we'll come to that. But any questions until here?
No, Ravi.
All right. Now, if if you have registered your domain with Route 53, this would get created automatically. Okay, so this hosted zone will be created automatically. Now, in this case, because we are using a third-party domain, we will have to create it manually, and also we have to map this with our third-party domain. So, how do we do that? I'll go to my domains, whatever the So here, if you see, this is the domain I have. We'll go to manage, and I'll go to this DNS or name servers, and here basically I add these 4 name servers. So I copy this one by one. We'll go over here. So this is an NS record, and we'll add this. So add record. Likewise, this will be the. So basically, we'll have to add all the 4 records. So let's call this as reflection. What? Unmutable. 1 minute. Let me check. Seem to be getting some error. Oh, come on. Okay, but ideally the thing is we just have to add these 4 name server records in any domain registrar that you are using. All right. But if you're using Route 53, you don't have to do this. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so we are looking at NS record, that's a name. Name can be anything you want, and then the NS record. So this will be the one. Let's try this. Okay, it's something new. Let's see. Hmm. Um, should have updated here. So let me. Okay, so looks like they've updated it. So I'm gonna add this over here. So you'll always have 4 name server records. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm adding that over here. So it's 3, and that's the 4th one. And save. Okay, so it may take up to 24 hours. Okay. So this becomes my name server. So whatever the name servers that you have created, you just need to add those records in your domain registrar. All right. Now this is the first time I'm trying it this way, because until now it was slightly different, and this seems to be a little different. So I'll have to see if this will work or not. But anyways, this is how you can add your name servers, right? And what this will do is this will basically create a connectivity between my domain and the hosted zone that I have created over here. Does this make sense? Any questions?
No, Ravi, clear.
All right. Now, once you have this created, then you can start creating your other type of records, the mappings. You can start doing it. So the other type of record we have is your A record. All right. So the A record, it stands for address record. So whenever you want to map an IP address to a URL, we can make use of your A record. So an A record is a fundamental type of DNS record, and the A in A record stands for address. So the A record is used by a computer to translate the name of the domain to the IP address. So whenever you want to sorry. So whenever you want to map your IP address to a URL, we can make use of this A record. So for example, until now, what we were doing was we were launching an EC2 instance, we were hosting an application on that, and then we were using that IP address to access that application. Now, to an end user, that's not how we do it, right? We cannot give the IP address to them. That's where we can make use of this URL. So I can map the IP address of this server, and I can create a URL over here. To do that, I will be creating a record. So here I can give the IP address. So for example, http://www.google.com might point to this. So to map this IP address to the domain name, we can make use of your A record. So you can use A record to route traffic to a resource such as a web server using an IPv4 address in a dotted decimal notation. So A record is only for IPv4. And if you have an IPv6 address, then you can go with this 4As. Okay, so this will be your IPv6 record. Questions?
No, sir.
Okay. The next record we have is your CNAME records. Now, CNAME records can be used when you want to map a URL to a URL. All right. For example, let's say you want to do a redirection. Then you can make use of your CNAME records. All right. So CNAME, it stands for canonical name and can be used to resolve one domain to another domain. For example, you may have a mobile website with a domain m.google.com that is used for when users browse to your domain name on their mobile devices. You may want the name mobile.google.com to resolve the same address. So let's say you have an application which is running on m.google.com. Now, if I hit the m.google.com, it will show me the application. Now, you also want to use this mobile.google.com. So if I hit this mobile.google.com, it should give me the same application. So I can map this URL with this URL. So to map this URL to URL, we make use of your CNAME record. So here, I can go with your CNAME and I can give the URL over here. For example, your load balancer URL or your S3 bucket URL. All those things can be done by using your CNAME records. So a CNAME record maps DNS queries for the name of the current record, such as test.example.com, to another domain such as example.com or subdomain another.example.com. Questions?
So in SES, like, in while sending email through SES, so you added CNAME, right? See, you added 3 CNAME
Yes.
address. So why not the other record type will work?
Because that is how it is designed. See, again, because again, see, other records is for, like, for example, let's say a record, it has to be an IP address,
Okay.
right? And with the SES, we don't get an IP address.
Okay.
Okay, it generates a URL for us.
Okay.
And that's why we use the CNAME.
Got it.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. And the other type of record we have is the alias record. So alias record can be used when you want to map your hosted zones to load balancers, CloudFront distributions, S3 buckets. Then we can make use of your alias record. So your alias records are same as your CNAME record. So alias records is also used for your URL to URL mapping. All right. However, this is specifically for your Route 53, sorry, load balancers, CloudFront distributions, S3 buckets, specifically for those. So unlike CNAME records, you can create an alias record at the top of the DNS namespace known as the zone apex. For example, if you register the domain name example.com, the zone apex is example.com. You cannot create a CNAME record for example.com, but you can create an alias record for example.com that routes the traffic. So I'll show you an example for this later on. But this is the other type we have. So we will be looking at your A record example. We'll also look at your CNAME example. We'll also look at your alias records example. Now, the next important thing that you will need to understand with your Route 53 is your routing policies. So when we are creating the records over here, we have the option of specifying the routing. So how you want the routing to take place, right? So when you create a record, you can choose a routing policy which determines how Amazon Route 53 responds to queries. And as of now, we have 7 types. We have the simple routing policy, which is the default one. We have the weighted routing policy. We have the failover routing policy. We have the geolocation routing policy, geo-proximity routing policy, latency-based routing policy, and then multi-value answer routing policy. So these are the 7 types that we have when we talk about your routing policies. We will be looking at each of these one by one with examples, and we will look at this tomorrow. But any questions until here?
No, sir.
No, Ravi.
Okay, so pretty much that's all for today. Tomorrow we will look at some examples for this, and we will finish off with your R53. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.